Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. Today we're tackling Think Like a Billionaire by Scot Anderson.
Oh yeah, this is a good one.
Yeah, and this guy, he went from like 250,000 to,
Chameleons?
yeah, 3 million in a year
Yeah,
with like another 15 million
in the works.
in projects underway.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So we're gonna break down exactly how we can apply these principles to our own lives and get there. One of the things that really struck me about the book is that he says that like it's not about how much money you have.
Mindset.
It's about your mindset.
Totally.
Yeah.
The whole book is about mindset. That's his thesis.
Yeah.
Like you can have $1 million, but if you don't have the right mindset, you're going to lose it all.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so tell me a little bit about that. Like how does he contrast the thinking of a billionaire versus like the average person?
Well, billionaires,
Mm.
they don't see money as something that you spend. They see it as like a tool.
To make more money.
Yeah, or to build something.
Yeah.
He has this example. He had this friend who's very wealthy, and he bought this rundown apartment complex,
Okay.
and he just fixed it up a little bit,
Uh-huh.
used the income from the rent like to fix it up, and then he just sold it like a couple of years later for a massive profit.
And so it's seeing that opportunity and having that vision, right? Because a
Right.
lot of people would look at a rundown apartment complex and think, ew, I don't want to touch that.
Yeah, or I want to buy myself a new car.
Right.
It's just a completely different mindset.
Yeah, and I think like most people, it's like, well, I've got to go to work so I can, have money to pay my bills.
Yeah.
But he's saying like, you got to flip that around.
You got to think like, how can I
Yeah.
use my job to get more money so I can invest it?
So that's the thing. It's like investing is not a thing you do when you're 65.
No.
This is like a
And-
constant thing.
Yeah, you should be thinking about that from day one.
Yeah. So like even if you're, just starting out your career, you should be learning about, investing and
Absolutely. Yeah, and he has a ton of books that he recommends in his book about financial literacy and
And that's another thing that he really stresses is that the wealthy, like they're constantly learning, right?
always, yeah. They're going to seminars, they're reading books, they're talking to mentors. They're just like sponges.
So it's almost like you got to treat your financial education like a college course. Like you've got to dedicate
Yeah,
time to it every week
absolutely.
just to like stay on top of things.
Yeah, and to learn the new trends and all that, yeah.
That's really interesting. And so like it sounds like what he's saying is that building wealth is not like a one-time event.
It's a process.
It's a process.
It's a journey.
And it's ongoing.
Yeah, and it never stops.
Okay, so even when you're a billionaire, you're still
Still learning.
yeah,
Still hustling.
hustling.
Yeah, he has this really interesting idea. He says, most people, they see their job as a way to pay for their lifestyle, right?
Right.
But billionaires, they see their job as a way to get money to invest.
So instead of thinking like, how much do I need to make to afford this lifestyle?
Right.
It's how can I use my income to grow my wealth?
Right.
That's a huge
shift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he talks about this idea. I thought this was pretty crazy. He says that you budget
Around your investments.
not around your material possessions. So it's
Okay.
like,
Exactly.
okay, I need to put this much into investments every month. Now, how much do I have left over for, life?
Right.
So it's like flipping the script completely.
Yeah, most people do it the opposite way. It's like,
Where-
oh, I need to pay my rent, my car payment.
What can I, how many lattes can I afford this week?
Exactly.
And then if there's anything left over,
And maybe I'll invest.
maybe.
Yeah.
But that's not how the wealthy think.
No.
Yeah.
And it's not about denying yourself things.
Yeah.
It's just about being intentional with your money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Now, this is where he gets into a little bit of a sensitive topic.
Yeah.
And, he talks about this thing called spiritual poverty.
Right.
And he really, really pushes back on that idea. He's like, look, if you're a good, Christian, then you should want to be abundant. You should want to have, resources so you can.
Yeah, and I think people might have a knee-jerk reaction to that because they think like, oh, you're just being greedy.
Right.
But what he's saying is like, if you look at it from a father's perspective,
Yeah,
what loving father wouldn't want his children to be blessed?
exactly.
So he's saying like, God wants you to be prosperous.
Yeah. And he wants you to glorify him through your success.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's a really important distinction to make is that it's not just about like,
Hoarding wealth.
hoarding wealth.
Yeah.
It's about like, what are you doing with your success? Are you using it
Help
to
others.
bless others, to, further God's kingdom?
Yeah. And he has a story of this salesperson
Okay.
who was like super, super successful, and he attributed all of his success to Jesus,
Okay.
and it gave him this platform to share his faith and to give back to his community, and it's like he's being blessed to be a blessing.
Right. Yeah.
And so that leads to another key element of Anderson's philosophy,
Yeah.
and that is vision.
Okay.
And he uses the parable of Peter. When Jesus tells Peter to cast his nets after he had taught him how to fish,
Right.
he says that this is like, it emphasizes understanding before action.
So it's not enough to just work hard.
You got to know what you're doing.
You got to know what you're doing. You got to know how to do it.
Exactly. You got to have the knowledge.
Yeah.
And he says that the wealthy, they speak a language that most people don't understand.
Look at they're operating
On a different frequency.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they see opportunities that other people just don't even see.
They don't even know they're there.
Yeah, they're blind to it.
Right.
Yeah, and he has this great anecdote where he bought this piece of land for $100,000 and he flipped it for $300,000 a couple of months later, just because he understood the language of real estate development.
So how do we start learning this language? Like how do we get on that frequency?
Well, he says it's all about preparation and continuous learning.
Okay.
Seek out mentors.
Yeah.
Study successful investors. Immerse yourself in the world of finance.
And it's like learning the cues, right?
Yeah.
It's like learning, okay, this means this and that.
Yeah, like what are the signals? What are the subtle cues?
Right.
You got to be able to read between the lines.
Okay. So it's about being prepared, being informed.
Informed, yeah.
And then recognizing that opportunity when it arises.
Absolutely.
So it's not enough to just have a vision.
No.
You've got to be ready to act on it when you see it.
Yeah, you got to be ready to pounce.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now that makes perfect sense. So that's having a vision.
Yeah.
But how do we really commit to that vision?
Right. That's the next step. So he talks about this idea of writing a check to God.
Okay.
And he doesn't mean like literally write a check.
Right.
But he's saying like you write out.
Your vision.
Yeah, like I am worth this much money.
So you're putting it out there.
You're solidifying it.
Okay.
And it's like a commitment.
Like I am committed to reaching this number.
Exactly. And it's not just like a vague aspiration.
Right.
It's like a concrete goal.
Oh, I love this idea.
Yeah. And it's funny because he actually draws this parallel to his son.
Okay.
Who was saving up for this toy.
Uh-huh.
And even at that young age, he understood the power of like setting a goal.
Yeah.
And sticking to it.
And like having that delayed gratification.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not going to spend my money on candy.
Right.
I'm going to save it until I can buy this thing.
And it's funny because it connects to this story in the Bible about the widow and the oil.
Oh.
Remember that? Where the size of her jars
determined how much?
Dictated the miracle.
Oh, that's so good.
That's so good.
Yeah, so like she was only able to receive as much as she was prepared to receive. So it's like we have to have these big jars.
Jars, yeah.
For God to fill.
Yeah, and you got to believe it too.
Okay, so it's not just about like wanting it or wishing for it.
No.
It's about actually like preparing your mind, your life.
Your environment for it to actually manifest.
Okay, now this is where I think some people might get a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because he talks about risk-taking.
Big-time risk taker.
Yeah.
And he even says that a billionaire will fail if they don't take risks.
But like the average person is so afraid of failure.
Oh, yeah.
That they just stay stuck.
They never try anything.
Yeah.
And, he makes the point that like the wealthy, they've probably failed more than anybody.
Because they're just trying so many things.
Yeah, they're constantly putting themselves out there. He uses that classic example of Colonel Sanders.
Oh, yeah.
Who was rejected like over 1,000 times.
Before KFC.
Before he got his recipe, his chicken recipe, to take off.
So it's like failure is part of the process.
It's part of the game.
Yeah. You can't let it stop you.
No. You got to embrace it.
Okay.
Learn from it and keep going.
So this brings up another thing that a lot of people are really afraid of.
Debt.
Debt, yeah. So how does he address that?
He makes a really interesting distinction between good debt and bad debt.
Okay.
So good debt is debt that you use to invest.
To grow your money.
To grow your money, to generate income.
Okay.
And bad debt is like consumer debt.
Okay, so like credit card debt.
Yeah, or like, a car loan.
That you can't really afford.
Yeah, that's just like dragging you down.
Dragging you down, yeah.
Yeah.
So he stresses the importance of good credit.
Huge.
Because it unlocks all these opportunities.
Right, it gives you leverage.
Yeah.
He actually shares that he's gotten over $13 million in loans. But he's used that money to fund, like, profitable ventures.
So it's about being smart about it.
Yeah, it's not just about taking on debt for the sake of it.
Right.
It's about using it strategically.
Okay, so for example, like, if you took out a loan to buy a rental property.
Yeah.
And the rent covers the mortgage.
And then some.
Yeah.
That's good debt.
That's good debt.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense.
Now, thinking about all these things he wants to accomplish.
Yeah, he's a busy guy.
He has to be really smart about his time.
So what are some of his insights on time management?
He says that billionaires, they see time as like a seed for future success.
Okay.
They're not wasting time.
But the average person, it's like we fritter our time away on all these things.
Yeah, like social media.
Social media.
Or just like, unproductive activities.
Yeah, like watching TV for hours.
Yeah. And he's like, ruthlessly eliminate time wasters, whether it's negative friends.
Oh, yeah.
Or unproductive habits.
Yeah.
Or tasks that you can delegate.
Outsource.
Outsource, yeah.
Okay.
And he even has these like little practical tips.
Okay.
Like using sticky notes for reminders, recording voice notes to capture ideas, and like turning wasted time into learning opportunities.
Oh, that's good. So like even if you're stuck in traffic.
Yeah, listen to an audiobook or podcast.
So it's about being mindful of where your time's going.
Yeah, and making sure that your actions are aligned with your goal.
Okay, I love that.
And, to really illustrate this idea of creating an environment for success.
Yeah.
He has this really cool analogy about deer hunting.
Deer hunting.
Yeah.
What does that have to do with wealth building?
Well, he says that successful hunters, they don't chase deer. They create an environment that attracts deer.
Okay.
So it's the same thing with wealth.
So instead of chasing opportunities,
Yeah.
you're making yourself
A magnet for opportunities.
I love that.
Yeah. So it's not, where's the money? Right. It's how do I become a magnet for money?
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, that's where this idea of favor comes in.
Okay.
And he talks about the biblical idea of covenant.
Yeah.
Like a two-sided agreement.
Uh-huh.
God does his part, we do our part.
Right.
And he says that favor flows through glorifying God.
Not just being saved.
Not just having faith.
You got to be actually doing something.
Yeah, living it out.
Okay.
And he uses the example of Abraham,
Okay.
who only received God's favor after he fully committed to his plan.
So it's like faith without works is dead.
Right. You got to be walking the walk.
Okay.
Now, another thing he talks about is the importance of being planted in a church community.
Okay.
And this is where it might not resonate with everybody.
Right.
But even if you're not religious, I think the point still stands, which is like being part of a community.
Yeah.
Whether it's a professional organization or a social group or whatever.
It's having that support system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he really emphasizes the benefits of being in a church community.
Okay.
Because you're surrounded by like-minded people.
Yeah, people who will support you, encourage you.
Accountability.
Yeah.
And there's networking opportunities.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. So even if you're not super religious.
There are benefits to
say.
being part of that kind of community.
And building on that idea of community, he also talks about the importance of surrounding yourself with winners.
Okay.
So it's not just any community. It's a community of people who are going somewhere.
Yeah, people who are striving for success.
And they're going to uplift you.
Right.
Not drag you down.
It's like you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Exactly.
So you gotta
choose wisely.
Carefully curate your circle.
Yeah, yeah.
And then he shares this really heartwarming story about his son.
Okay.
Who got this new toy, and he just gave it to his brother. Yeah. Just like out of the goodness of his heart.
That's so sweet. It was just like pure love and generosity.
Yeah.
And Anderson really emphasizes the power of giving.
Okay.
And he's not just talking about money.
Time, talents.
Yeah, your energy.
Yeah.
Like anything you can give.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people get caught up in thinking like, oh, I don't have enough to give.
Right.
But it's not always about money.
No.
It's about
the heart.
Yeah, yeah.
It's about, are you willing to share what you have?
Right.
Even if it's just a little bit.
And I love that he brings up this concept of first fruits.
Yeah.
Which is a biblical principle of giving the first portion of your income
to God as an act of faith and gratitude.
So it's like prioritizing giving and acknowledging that everything we have ultimately comes from him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he says that this act of giving, it not only blesses others,
but it also unlocks
greater blessing for ourselves.
So it's like the cycle of abundance. The more you give,
the more you receive.
Yeah. And it's not just financial.
No, it's in every area of life.
Yeah. I love that.
And it all comes back to this idea of aligning our thoughts, our actions, and our beliefs with our vision.
Yeah. So it's like, if we want to live a life of abundance, we have to start thinking and acting
accordingly.
Yeah. So it really is a holistic approach.
It is, yeah.
He's like, you can't get extraordinary results with ordinary thinking.
Right.
You know? If you want to be a billionaire, you can't think like the average person.
You got to think differently.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, that sounds great in theory.
Yeah.
But how do you actually do that?
Well, he says that one of the best things you can do is find mentors.
Okay.
People who have already achieved what you want to achieve.
Surround yourself with.
Winners.
Yeah.
Join mastermind groups.
Oh, yeah.
And be constantly learning.
So constantly reading, going to conferences.
Seminars.
Yeah.
Just like immersing yourself in that world.
So it's creating that environment for success. Okay, I love that.
And remember, success is not a destination.
It's a journey.
It's a journey.
And it's going to have ups and downs.
Yeah, there's going to be setbacks.
There's going to be times when you want to quit.
Yeah, you're going to want to give up.
But it's like that marathon runner, right?
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
You've got to pace yourself.
You got to keep going.
Yeah.
You got to have that endurance.
So, with all this talk about mindset and vision and taking action,
Yeah.
how does he address the very real fear that people have?
Fear of failure.
Yeah. And like, especially when it comes to money,
It's a big one.
it can be a really big one.
Yeah.
So how does he help people overcome that?
Well, he says that fear is natural.
Okay.
It's part of the human experience,
It's like a survival mechanism,
but it can also hold us back.
keep us stuck.
Yeah.
So what's the key to like not letting fear paralyze you?
He says you got to face your fears head on,
Okay.
identify them, and then challenge them.
Okay, so for example, if you're afraid of investing because you're afraid of losing money, what do you do?
You got to educate yourself,
Okay.
learn about investing, understand the risks, and then start small.
So it's not about like just jumping in the deep end.
No.
It's about taking those baby steps.
Yeah. And also replace those negative thoughts.
With positive affirmations.
Yeah. Like instead of saying, I'm going to lose all my money,
Right.
you say, I'm a smart investor. I'm going to make wise decisions.
So it's really about changing your self-talk.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Your thoughts become your reality.
I love that. And I think that applies to so many areas of life, not just finances.
Oh, yeah. Universal.
Okay. So we've talked about a lot of really powerful concepts today.
We have.
But if there's one thing that our listeners could take away from this deep dive,
Yeah.
what would it be?
I would say it's this. You have the power to create the life you want.
Okay.
It all starts with your mindset.
Your thoughts, your beliefs.
Yeah. And then taking action.
So don't be afraid to dream big.
And don't let fear hold you back.
Yeah. And if you fall down, get back up.
Learn from your mistakes.
Just keep going.
Yeah. Perseverance is key.
I love that.
So go out there and think like a billionaire.
I love it. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
My pleasure.
And we'll see you next time.
Did you get any of that?